Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Squirrels can eat up all your hard work in the garden. Today, we're going to talk about how to get rid of them. Also, flower beds need flowers. Today, we're talking about some perennial options for season-long color. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mike Dennison. Mr. D is a retired UT Extension agent, and Carol Reese will be joining me later. All right, Mr. D.
Glad to be here.
Always good to have you here. Let's talk about something that I know that you love to discuss. How about squirrels?
Let's talk about
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
How do we control those squirrels?
You know, I need to give you a little background information, I think, on me.
Okay.
I used to love squirrels. I used to love them. They were an important part of the protein diet of my family.
Wow.
When I grew up,
Okay.
there were 6 of us kids
Okay.
on a family farm in northwest Tennessee. Fast forward to 2010.
Okay.
I moved to the community of Halls, Tennessee, and squirrels started doing about $600 worth of damage a year to my vehicles. And I planted a few apple trees, and they had a couple of good crops of apples, and they got them all. I mean, they didn't leave any for me.
No, Mr.
They
D?
started picking them before the apples were ripe.
Oh,
even,
my God.
And they got them all. So I do have a little experience with squirrel control. But now,
Okay.
some of the methods I'm going to mention I don't have access to. For
Okay.
example, one of the best is a 12-year-old with a 20-gauge shotgun. And I guess I need to say you need to do that where it's legal.
Yes.
And
yes.
you check during squirrel season even is to be legal. Now, things that I have found to also be successful is loud music.
Oh, okay.
My apple trees now enjoy loud country music. For some reason, that seems to bother the squirrels. They must, they don't like country music, I guess.
Okay.
24 hours a day, 7 days a
Really?
week, loud country music, and the different songs and the announcer and all that all help. I mean, I had a good crop of apples last year. I also used there are solar powered little contraptions that you can stick in the ground, battery operated, solar powered, that are motion activated, and lights will flash, the siren will go off whenever anything triggers that.
Okay.
And I have one of those. That probably helped a little bit too. Maybe more for deer than squirrels.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but because I'm not sure how, if a squirrel would trigger it, he could probably get into the tree without triggering it.
Gotcha.
Deer, maybe not so much. So those are a couple of things that I found to be successful. Things that you can use that I haven't tried, which I know would work, is a physical netting, wire mesh, a physical barrier.
Yeah.
But that's not very practical for me around my fruit trees.
Gotcha.
If you have a smaller plant, tomato plant or something like that, they'll get your tomatoes. I mean,
Oh, yes, they will.
they get everything at my house. But the physical barrier like that will work. Trapping them, very effective.
Okay.
I use an ear of corn, and so that bait will stay there usually until I catch a squirrel, or the birds get in there and eat it, and birds don't tend to trigger the trap.
Okay.
If they do, I let them out. The squirrels, we dispatch of in other ways. And dog. If you have a dog that you're in an area that your dog can run free, or if it's a fenced-in area, Jack Russell Terriers are great squirrel dogs. But any dog, any barking dog that doesn't like squirrels will will help. With squirrels, they're smart. Generally, you have to mix these up, use more than one method to try to control them. They will, if you just use one method, they will probably get used to it and start, you know, being a problem again. If you're planting fruit trees, if you get them, you know, locate them where in an area that trees aren't, they can't access your fruit trees from other trees, that might help. There are barriers that you can get put around trees, plastic and metal barriers where little claws can't navigate through that. Those help. If there's a problem with bird feeders, there are baffles that you can get that go both above and below the feeders that are shaped so that if they jump over, they'll flip off.
I've seen some of those.
All that. So you can, you know, there's some they call them baffles that will do a pretty good job for you around the bird feeders and things like that. And there are some bird feeders out there that are squirrel proof or squirrel resistant that you might want to check out. A squirrel can jump 5 feet straight up. Keep that in mind. They can jump 10 feet horizontally. And if they're up on a roof and going down toward a bird feeder, they can go 16 feet. So that's just a little something you need to know about squirrels.
Squirrels are tough.
Yep.
Yeah, tough. So what about these repellents? How do you feel about those?
They may give you some temporary relief, but I think they get used to it. The peppers and all that might give you some temporary relief. And I understand that there's some plants out there that supposedly squirrels don't like, but I've not had much success with that.
Right.
I'd try it.
You try it?
Yeah, I recommend that you try it. You know, one thing you could do, I understand UT has a wildlife damage control manual.
They do.
There's a good section in there on squirrels. That'll give you some more ideas, and also for any other critters you're trying to get rid of. I encourage you to check that out. That manual, I used it a lot when I was working at that time at the University of Nebraska, and a consortium of other universities put that thing together, and I understand UT has taken it.
We have one now, it talks about the biology, you know, of the squirrels, how to trap them.
Oh, it's more than just how to control them, but you learn more than you want to know about them. And they've got armadillos and possums and skunks and mice, and I mean, every kind of wild critter out there that can create a problem for you. You know, I understand that I am probably encroaching in the squirrel's habitat. I live in the woods now, so I'm probably encroaching in the squirrel's habitat. But I bought it, it's mine, and I'm gonna, I gotta defend what's mine.
Yeah, you want some apples, don't you?
I want some apples.
Oh, man, that's good. All right, Mr. D, we appreciate that, and we will have that link, you know, to that publication on our website. So,
All I can say is good luck.
Good luck. You know? Good luck. Thank you, Mr. D.
If you grow peaches, plums, or nectarines, and you do it for any length of time, you're going to encounter a problem such as this. The main problem here is peach tree borer. When you have boring insects that get in the base, lower part of the tree will actually try to flush the borer out. And so that's why you'll see sap being exuded from the tree. And you can see another example right over here. But it's peach tree borer that started the problem. It weakened the tree, and then wind came along and split it. The way to prevent peach tree borer application, once I've gone back to our home orchard spray guide, May 31st, June 30th, July 15th, spray the trunk and lower limbs and the soil around the base of the tree with either S-fenvalerate or gamma cyhalothrin. That's the 6th cover spray in the home orchard spray guide. Very important.
So let's talk about best plants for Tennessee.
So what did I plant for sure? It's common, but an adorable plant, I'm just gonna start with spring, that seems logical, is our little moss phlox. I love the little phlox Subulatas, they just do great ground covers. They also serve as a winter interest because they're evergreen. They're highly durable. You can get a range of colors of different kinds of pinks and blues and purples, even whites, if you decide that some of the pinks might clash with your coral azaleas. So I've got to have that. I've gotten a little crazy over columbines, which to me were not a huge favorite to begin with. They look delicate, but they're really not. They're tough and durable, and they reseed generously, and I love that fact. I really fell in love with one at work called Woodside Variegated, and it came to us as a golden green variegation with cobalt blue flowers.
Wow.
And as it
Sounds
reseeds
nice.
into our mulch, it comes back both gold, green, and variegated, but it's become now where it's mostly gold, but still has the cobalt blue flowers. So I took some of the seeds home and shook them around in my little woodland area, and this was the first year they really bloomed prolifically, and I'm spreading them around to other parts of the garden. And our native columbine, which I adore, because the hummingbirds love it as well, and they are very, very tough plants. That spring ephemeral kind of disappears as it gets hot, so you're going to have to start, then I like to go into successional gardening. Later phlox would be woodland phlox, which can be used in sun or shade, and will give you a good bloom season to take you on into the hotter days of summer. Of course, there's tons of selections for summer. I'm a big fan of the coneflowers, and I love some of the newer ones that have come out. The powwow wild berries have been very good. I know, powwow,
Yeah,
you kind
powwow.
of stretch
Yeah.
your mouth when you say it. There's a hard one to forget.
Right.
And they've been really good because some of the new colors, even though they're exciting, have not been very durable perennials for us. That's a very friendly one for wildlife. Those of us who care about the pollinators, of course, are going to add those. And everybody knows about the Rudbeckia fulgida, the black-eyed Susan, but there's a bunch of other good Rudbeckias. The Hirtas are often just annuals. They'll reseed generously, but why wouldn't one go get a pack of seeds of Rudbeckia hirta, also called Gloriosa daisy? The Trilobas, there's a bunch of other Rudbeckias that I think are valuable additions. I have a big place, not necessarily my house, a modest little home, but a big landscape and a lot of acreage. So whereas a lot of people like little plants, I like big, bold plants. I want big impact, a lot of bang for the buck. So having been a fan of the tropical look all my life, I'm going for the cannas and the elephant ears that have proven to be more perennial for me. So I have to have Bengal tiger. That's my favorite canna with that gorgeous golden striped foliage, because even when it's not in bloom, it's so beautiful. And Tropicana as well has a beautiful foliage. Both have orange blooms. Tropicana tends to get a little faded looking later in the summer, and I like to mingle those with the elephant ears. An elephant ear that I have found to be very durable, almost aggressive, is one called Illustris. And Illustris has the black leaf, and most of the black leaf forms are not perennial, but Illustris has a black leaf with a strong green vein. It's not going to get quite as big and lush as some of them, but it spreads nicely for me, and so I can move it around and put it in different parts of the garden. And just one more, it's not a perennial, but I always grow it every year from seed, would be the castor bean plant. Now, a lot of people are worried about that because it does have a poisonous bean. So be aware that if you've got kids or critters that might eat the poisonous beans, but the big red form, Carmen or Carmen.
Is they say red all summer?
Yes.
I mean, that's the fruit's kind of interesting with
It's beautiful.
with the kind of spiky, and you probably wouldn't have moles around it, I guess. With
That was the old theory.
Yeah.
My granddaddy grew them and called them mold killer bushes. So
How about that?
Do you think
So
that plays
it's-
out, or
I don't think so. In fact, I don't even think the beans are quite as poisonous as rumored to be from recent research. You really have to eat a good number of them to be killed dead. It used to be, you thought you ate one, you were a goner.
the ricillinic acid, I think, is the
Right,
toxin.
right. But anyway, I just want to throw that out there for
Okay,
people
sure,
to be
sure.
cautious.
Glad
But
you did.
gosh, again, so much bang for the buck from a few seeds. Getting into fall, I'm really getting into the asters and the goldenrods that aren't terribly invasive. Again, that extends the plants for the pollinators, a lot of those butterflies that are migrating north through that time. They're migrating south in the fall. And people think of monarchs, but the sulfurs also migrate. A lot of the salvias that are late blooming, and goodness, how did I leave out salvias for summer?
Love salvias. Yeah.
I'm a huge salvia file, love them, and a lot of them show off well in the fall with like Mexican bush sage. And I love the combination of the old Mexican bush sage with the old autumn joy sedum. I know that's kind of an old plant and there's newer colors and exciting foliage, but the autumn joy, I love that color. They're very sturdy, and I leave them up through the winter, which we're getting into the winter, for winter interest, with a little cap of snow on them. They look really good. Some evergreen perennials for winter interest would include the sweet flag. It's kind of a grassy. I love any of the sedges. Evergold, Everillo is particularly spectacular, a solid gold sedge. And the hellebores, which have become commonplace and easy to find now, are both evergreen and winter bloomers. So that wraps us back around toward spring. And who doesn't love a few daffodils?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't like to overdo them because you got to look at that foliage for so long. So I do mingle them with the other plants as well, so that I can hide the ugly foliage.
Yeah, you can put them in the back of the bed or the back of the yard.
That's right. And they do well in the woodland setting, which finally I do have a shade garden established, which leads me back to one that's not as common, and that is, I forgot to mention, the Japanese anemone, which is a really easy to grow shade lover that looks very delicate. It looks like a beautiful pink or white poppy in the woodland landscape. I'm going back again to something I meant to mention.
Sure.
And I know you love the natives of the Spigelia, marylandica, sometimes called Indian pink. I don't like that name because there's a lot of other plants called Indian pink. And Spigelia is fun and pretty to say.
Yeah.
Used to be hard to find. You can find Spigelia pretty readily now in the landscape.
If you need to transplant some of your annuals because they're not in the right space, you take a trowel and you get next to the side of where it is and dig down and pry up and go around the plant to make sure you get all of the existing root system you can, and then you gently lift it out of the ground, root system and all. Once you're to the place where you want to plant it, if there's mulch there, you need to scrape the mulch away and dig a hole the size of the plant root ball that you have in your hand. Keep the soil level even with the soil level on the plant and gently plant it in place. When you're done, put the mulch back over and around it. And then it's finished.
All right, Mr. D, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
I am ready.
These are some great questions. Here's our first viewer email. How do you kill grasshoppers in the garden? And this is Marion from Roy, Utah. So let me say this, they want to kill the grasshoppers.
And I can tell you, according to the Utah State Extension Service, carbaryl dust will work. Liquid malathion, liquid carbaryl, liquid permethrin, bifenthrin sprays will do the trick. They're relatively easy to kill. Smaller they are, the easier they are to kill. And that's what's recommended for use in home gardens.
And that's how you're going to kill them.
That's it.
Control them.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Read and follow the label.
They can wipe you out. They can demolish you pretty quick.
Right. Yeah, they can definitely do some damage to your foliage.
That's correct.
That is for sure. They are mobile. You don't want to say
They are.
of course, a lot older. So you want to control them when they're young. But I mean, those are the means to.
And stay with them. You know, you may completely kill the ones that are out there today, and you have more come in tomorrow. So you may have to almost keep that protective insecticide coat on there if you have real heavy infestations.
Right.
But
Right.
but then you be sure follow the label directions
follow
with
the
these
label.
products, and
That's for sure.
and especially pay attention to the harvest restrictions of the different.
Yeah, that's a good
vegetables.
point. You know, I'm sitting here thinking too, I mean, you can actually plant a trap crop, of zinnias, for example, just around the border. Let them congregate, in those areas, and
Maybe they'll stay there and not come in.
maybe. That'd be easy to control because they'd be in that area. Yeah, so that's something else.
That might help.
Yeah, that's something else to thought about. So that may help, Marion. So yeah, we appreciate that. But yeah, do read and follow the label, on those products. All right. Thank you for that question. Here's our next viewer email. Can I grow a peach tree in an area that floods about once a year? And this is Nancy from Central West Virginia. She says a river covers her garden a couple of times per year, but apple and pear trees are doing fine there. So what are you thinking?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't have recommended planting apple and pear trees there, but they're working so far.
Yeah.
But peach trees do not like wet feet. They recommend planting them in well-drained soils. I think you'd be taking a big chance if you did that.
Yeah.
I could say no, and you might prove me wrong. Plant it and have really good luck. But peaches have so many things that you have to do right to produce a crop. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. So here are my thoughts. I actually have a pear tree at home, right? So pear trees are tolerant of wet soils. And that area of my yard stays wet for a little bit.
Okay.
Right? So with that being said, right, when I think about flooding, I think about water, of course, being around the root zones of the plant. I think about the depletion of nutrients, but I also think about the lack of oxygen. That will stress out your tree. When you have stressed trees, then you're going to have those issues that you talked about.
Correct.
Right. So, I mean, it's going to be pretty tough. Now, I would recommend going to your local extension office, having a conversation with them. It's a free service, right? Free advice, right?
Yeah.
Just see what they have to offer, take that information, use it to your judgment. Right.
Yep.
But I appreciate the question.
Yeah, good question.
Good question. All right, so thank you, Ms. Nancy, appreciate that. Here's our next viewer email. My muscadine grapes usually produce great, but nothing last year. What did I do wrong? This is Homer from Maryville, Tennessee. He says last year he did not prune them, but also does not use any fertilizer. All right, Mr. D. Think about that muscadines, right? You like muscadines.
I do like muscadines. I do like muscadines very much. And, think about how muscadines fruit. They fruit on current season's growth that comes out of 1-year-old wood. And the way we prune muscadines is we cut all of the 1-year-old wood back to a couple of buds, leave a couple of buds, and then the new growth, the current season growth that comes out of that is what produces the muscadines.
Okay.
So he didn't prune last year, so he should have had a lot of 1-year-old wood. Too much, way too much of 1-year-old wood.
Okay, I see where you're going. Okay.
But you still should have had some current season's growth come out of that.
Okay.
And you should have had some muscadines, unless that happens to be a female muscadine, and you may have lost another self-fertile or perfect flowered muscadine around that had pollinated that muscadine in the past. That would be a question I would ask. It might, if it's a female, it requires cross-pollination. If it's a perfect flowered muscadine, it does not require pollination, and it can pollinate the females.
Interesting.
So it brings on more questions. They need a high pH, relatively high pH, and they need a little bit of fertilizer, but not a lot. So I don't think either one of those would keep them from. The only thing I could think that would keep them from producing at all is if a late frost or late freeze killed all of the new growth. If you had all your new growth and it burned it back to 2-year-old wood. If all you had was 2-year-old wood, you're not going to have any muscadines. So
That's good. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah. It would have been a late frost.
I can't think of anything.
Yeah, because outside of that, I'm with you on the pollination. I always think about, if you don't get fruit, then something happened with the pollination.
Yeah, if they sprayed them with an insecticide during bloom, that could keep them from producing either. They wouldn't get pollinated. But that's one thing I would check and see if somebody lost a muscadine.
Yeah.
A neighbor lost one, or if they had another one that, and then I would think that's probably a female.
Okay. All right. Homer, hope that
But
answers
I
your
would
question,
recommend you
though.
prune it, though.
Yeah,
You need to
recommend pruning.
And
Right.
make sure you got a pollinator.
Right. Okay. Yeah. and then go to your local extension office up there.
There you
They'll
are.
help you out.
Go visit those
Up
guys.
there in Maryville, they can do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you for that question, Homer. We appreciate that. Here's our next viewer email. Can mason bees be used to pollinate fruit trees and vegetables? And this is Susan. How about that? That's an interesting question. All right. So
I'd
what do you
say
think?
yes.
I say yes.
They're good pollinators.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see why not.
I think they're good. A little something about mason bees I've learned over the years, from some of our beekeepers, David Glover, of course, the Bartlett Bee Whisperer, right? They actually transfer more pollen and they will visit more types of plants.
Very aggressive,
Right.
very good
Yeah.
pollinators. They are.
So
Yeah.
I think the orchard mason bee is what we call it. Yeah, the orchard mason bee. Right. So, yeah.
So yes, without a doubt.
Without a doubt, Susan. Yeah, so encourage those pollinators that you have out there, right? All right. This day is fun as always.
We did it, didn't
Yeah, we learned a lot, don't we?
we? Don't. I
learned a
learn something
lot.
new every day.
All right, thank you much. Thank you much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to read the wildlife control manuals Mr. D used for squirrels or any other pest animals, go on over to our website, familyplotgarden.com. We will have links to the whole wildlife control manual series. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.